Good day and thanks for joining us on today's interview segment. We will be looking, as I did mention in my earlier remarks, the impact of flooding and how same can be mitigated as far as food security is concerned. Joining me this day on today's episode is Professor Emmanuel Adanu. He happens to be the Director General of the National Institute of Water Resources located in Kaduna, northern Nigeria. Prof, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Flooding has become a perennial issue and to a large extent threatening our very existence. How did we get here?
Well, if you look at Nigeria, the shape of Nigeria and the shape of the rivers in Nigeria, we have these two major rivers that have a Y shape.
That's right.
Those rivers drain the country effectively to the ocean. So every year, there are areas along this Y shape that get flooded, however severe the rainfall is. Now, when it is too much, then you can have extensive flooding. But the flooding annually is there and there's nothing you can do about it. It's the nature of the drainage and the land use in certain environments. So those environments around this Y-shaped drainage structure, some areas can get flooded. What I would like to mention here is flooding is the only natural disaster that has both positive and negative implications. The positive implication of it, about 80 to 90% of it is agricultural. So when we have flooding, sometimes it is the promotion of agricultural development. But how to manage it is usually the problem. Now, the negative part of it is the destruction we have and some other things. Sometimes farmland can be washed off. But where you are not farming and the flood comes and deposits the nutrients, it's okay. And there are other areas that the flood will come, allow water to sink into the ground and recharge the environment. That is for agriculture using residual moisture. That's also a good sign of flooding. Now, when we intend to mitigate flooding, you can't stop flooding anyway, it's natural. When you intend to mitigate flooding, you must consider what you must do. Let me fast forward to 2022.
That's right.
The president, former president Buhari, constituted a committee to come up with a comprehensive master plan for prevention of flooding in Nigeria. That was the assignment given to us, and I was the chairman of the technical working group. We redefined it to mitigation and adaptation because you cannot prevent flooding. Okay. And flooding is necessary. Sometimes we need it. Now, in mitigating the flood, the risks is what we consider: vulnerability, hazard, and then exposure. So we try to identify areas that the inhabitants are vulnerable to, and also try to see how we put either structural measures or non-structural measures to reduce the risks. Now, flooding, in its true sense, can be very, very useful in the economy. So when you are putting a fiscal measure for flood mitigation, you should consider the effect of it to the economy. So in doing so, we have about 10 different strategies. The last one was the contribution of flooding to the economy. So we took that one aside and then came out with, strategic actions that are, yes, we have them there. This report was sent to the president. It was approved before they left. But our PAMSEC has proactively again reminded the current administration, sent a letter to them that they need to do something about that because the flood is already here. When we went round, incidentally, we went round to in fact, the whole country, the areas that are most affected. And I had an interview with some of the people who are living the floodplains. I can tell you one story. One of them, in Makodi, I remember, I asked him, why do you insist on living in the floodplains? What if the government decides to relocate you? They say they won't go anywhere.
Could it be some kind of attachment to his ancestral land and what have you?
Yeah, that is not even ancestral land. This person I'm talking of is not even from Benue State, but he resides there. So you cannot talk of ancestral land. Now, his vocation is farming in the floodplain and fishing the floodplains. So I said, but if the government relocates, he would say no. The resource for it is the water and the land and then the fish. So if they relocate him to somewhere else, how will he have access to this place? So I said, okay. Why here 2012? He said yes. Now what happened? He said it was terrible. And you're here now. Say yes. Between 2012 and 2022, what were you doing? Because I remember there were floods here and there, but they were not as serious as these two major ones.
That's right.
He said between 2012 and 2022, he had working and doing his activities in the floodplain. He has built houses, he has bought some cars, I mean, pickups for this thing. He has trained 4 of his children in the university, and he married another wife, all those. So I said, okay. Now, 2022, was there any damage? Say, yeah, a lot of damage. I said, okay, these damages you have incurred 2022 compared to what you accrued between 2012 and 2020. He said, you can't compare them. That he would take that risk if the flood is not coming that way. He would take the risk to remain there. Yeah, again. So I said, okay, if you are going to take the risk, what do you want government to do for you? You know what he said? He said, if possible, please, government should reduce the level of flooding. The level of flooding. So he has already determined the category of flooding he would accommodate. And we took that into consideration because these floods come with lots of nutrients and they produce them for them. So we took that into consideration. But there are areas that are floodplains that people encroach, whether you tell them or not. Prior to, like at the neck of the two rivers in Kogi,
That's right.
there's a floodplain there that in 1980 all the way to 2014, the place was kept there. But from 2014 to 2022, people started migrating into this environment. So now you are encroaching the floodplain. So we should advise those getting into the floodplain who are not there at normal time should stop getting into the floodplain.
From all indications, NIMET, which is the agency responsible for the early warning signs, would normally tell Nigerians, expect this, expect that. But it appears within limits, we get caught unawares all the time.
Yes.
Could it be the attitude of the people, probably from a story like the one you just gave us?
Well, attitude of the people, I don't think is a major, it's part of it, but it's not the major. As I told you, we have floodplains that must be flooded all the time. If we know the regime of flooding, then we should use it to our benefit. Like in some parts of KB, the flood water comes annually, certain environments. So what they can do is that since we have not been able to divert the flood successfully to other environments that are drier, now the farming regime should be such that you farm using the residual moisture from flooding and the nutrients that it has produced, and then move away during flooding. Okay. So farm elsewhere. If the government can provide elsewhere for them, you want to cultivate throughout the year. Farm elsewhere. Then during flood, you move away. After flood, you can come. So we can do such schedules and then have our people very busy in the flooding is not totally bad. So I think we're talking of flooding with agriculture. Yes. That's why I'm just giving full brief. We have other floods that are not, that could be in the town, flash floods and some other floods. But all we did during our assignment is to look at those who are involved in water management and see whether they have regulations or guidelines for this operation. Whether we need to change it looking at the emerging problems today
That's right.
that is related to climate change.
All right. I have had experts argue that we can actually harvest water from these floods, that is becoming a perennial issue. You say it is advantageous. Of course, it has its own disadvantages. But looking at dam constructions and what comes with it in terms of cost and what have you, is it feasible?
Yeah, sure, it's feasible. If you look at the master plan, the Water Resources Master Plan, 1995 and 2013, incidentally, I was part of those who worked on it. We identified thousands of dams in the country. It could be small dams, nice positions, even small dams for villages to have their small irrigation project. Look, food produced anywhere is food, whatever quantity.
That's right.
So when we start concentrating on commercial, this is where we lose sometimes the sight. Because as we speak today, you and I, the people feeding us here are not commercial farmers.
Farmers, no, they're not. They're
It's an
peasant
aggregate
farmers.
of the yes. So let's not concentrate too much on making life easy for those people who are going to have this commercial farm. I'm forgetting the people who have brought us up with this subsistence farming.
That's right.
Most of us are trained using that, and we should encourage them, make it easier for them to produce. And if you provide them with water, low level, small dams, with 1 million cubic meters, with even 500,000 cubic meters, it will help them. So I think we should look at dam construction appropriately.
How do we even keep these dams clean anyway?
If you want to reduce the sedimentation in dams, there are certain measures you need to take. They call it watershed management, put structures that will reduce the inflow of sediment silt into the dam and then catch them up there. You can plant trees and grass. Forestation is very, very important as strategic position. And we've identified some of them. We already have natural environments that are helping that. Incidentally, one of the best environments is the Sambisa forest.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful environment for such.
Okay.
It reduces the flood, contains this, and then releases. We have about 3 rivers going to Sambisa.
Oh,
2 of them are out. The third one is just sprayed there.
I see.
So, it moderates.
That's right.
We have identified that too.
All right.
And about 12 or 11 others.
Well, as we begin to round up, I will want to find out your perspective of what you foresee come the future.
In terms of water development and also for agriculture, the country should have about 15% of its total area coverage forest.
Wow.
Today we have about 5% covered by.
So a lot of
Nigeria.
afforestation needs
We
to
need
take
that
place.
one, yes. We
I
need
see.
a lot of it.
All right. Well, at this point, I want to say thank you so much, Professor Emmanuel Adanu, the Director General of the National Institute of Water Resources, Kaduna, who has been sharing his thoughts with us on all important topic flooding.